And good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hoops HD's bracket rundown with the all-star complete cast here. Uh, what a great night we have in store for you, everybody here. First of all, I'm your host, Chad Sherwood. Let me
Who's in?
introduce everybody here.
Chad, who's in?
And since he's already talking, let's start with David Griggs. David, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Who's in? Who's in?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out.
Boise in? How come you know who's in? Okay.
Also, returning to join us again is Warren Nolan from warrennolan.com. Great website. Anybody out there wants to check it out, if you haven't done so already, you absolutely should. Warren, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great.
Great to have you back again. Joby returning as well. Joby, how are you doing down there in Virginia land, I guess?
Well, we're snowed in, and at least my appendix is still good. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Do you have any update on the injury here? Is it going to be back in time
surgery? By all accounts, surgery went really well. It was not a ruptured appendectomy for Justin Anderson, who was expected to come back this weekend. It will not be happening this weekend. I don't know, how long out to be determined, but that I've seen reports that 7 to 10 days is, since they caught it very, very early. It's a small incision, the small incision kind. If that's the case, he could be back for the ACC tournament because Virginia has the double bye all the way to Friday.
Right, so they won't be playing for another 7 days. Well, he should definitely be available for the NCAA tournament then. Finally, also with us is John, coming to us from I believe from Big East country out there, further west than me, right?
Yep, that's the western half of Big East country.
Yeah, and I'm in the eastern half of Big Ten.
20.
Okay, now our plan today is actually each one of you, as well as myself, put together a 1 through 68 tournament seed list over the course of the day today. I tabulated all of the results, came up with what is the consensus bracket based upon our results, our picks of who we had in, and where we had them ranked. Went ahead and bracketed that as well. And what we're going to do here, if I can get it up on my screen, is actually we're going to reveal the bracket one line at a time. So we're going to start with a blank bracket. Let me know when you guys can see that.
And none of us know the results except Chad. That's the key for the audience out.
Well, how come Chad always is the one that gets to know the results? I don't know. I wanted to know the results, but you all insisted that it be Chad. I don't understand that.
Well, David, it's after that debacle up in Albany last night, and on top of that, apparently you were not even allowed into the Metro Atlantic games, which are also in Albany tonight, I heard. So
that would have never happened at me.
Well, what we're going to do is go through the bracket.
Chad?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I think we lost you.
Okay, am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Both of you are back.
Hey, Joby, we're getting a lot of feedback. From your... Yeah.
Okay. All right. This is starting off really good already, isn't it? Okay, well, we're going to start by revealing the bracket here.
All right. Joey, can you turn either the microphone or the speakers down? I don't know why it just suddenly started doing that. Okay.
Did we lose Joey?
I'm here.
Okay.
All right, well, we're going to try to go ahead here now. And we're still getting a lot of feedback somewhere from here.
Okay. Where is Joby, I think it's coming from yours. We're off to a fantastic start. Right here. Okay.
Did that work? All right.
I muted the microphone. Did that affect the feedback?
No, we're still getting it. All right.
Hey,
the parrot.
Yeah. Okay.
Are we good to go now?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we've got this.
Mute Joby whenever he wants to speak.
All right. Well,
another great. Great start we're off to here.
Yeah, our very professional podcast here, but we are now get things going. So let's get things going here. Drum roll, please. We're going to reveal the 1 seeds right now. And there we go. Can you see them on the screen?
Yeah.
We can see them.
All right, and there they are. The number 1 overall seed playing their first round games in Louisville in the Midwest region is Kentucky. Number 2 overall was Virginia. Number 3 was Duke, and number 4 was Villanova. I believe this was unanimous across the board for everybody in this order.
Yeah.
Um,
And Duke is in Charlotte, which again is one of the bracketing rules. They have to play in either Charlotte or Greensboro, right?
Or Raleigh.
Or Raleigh.
Raleigh. Right. Well, let's start with there with Kentucky, and John. Let me start with you. You're geographically, I think, the closest one to Kentucky. Your thoughts on this Kentucky team specifically? Are they going to go into the tournament undefeated or not?
Oh, I'm pretty sure they're going to go into the SEC tournament undefeated.
I meant the NCAA tournament.
Even with the NCAA tournament, I'm pretty sure they're going to go in undefeated at this point. Maybe someone trips them up in the semifinals, but I'm certainly not seeing it happening in the quarterfinal round.
Yeah, they're just so much better than everybody else in that league. I think there are teams that can beat them. In fact, I think everybody on the 1 line can beat them, but I don't think anybody really can beat them before that, except maybe Gonzaga.
Our number 2 overall team was Virginia, and Joby, let's bring you in here on this. Potentially without Anderson coming up for the ACC tournament. Where do you see them doing?
The key is I think to win it all and to challenge and probably make the Final Four, they need Anderson. The outside shooting is hit. The element he's brought with the outside shooting is key. The defense is still, as evidenced by that Syracuse game, the defense is going to be strong. It's unaffected, even though Anderson is a great defender. We'll see. A lot depends on matchups. With Anderson, they probably are the second best team in the country. Without him, they are one of many very good teams still deserving of that. Right now you have Kentucky and probably 7 others and we'll see them in the 2 line. They're I think they're the best of those 7 with Anderson. Without, they might be at the bottom end of those 7.
All right. Number 3 overall, we have Duke here. As we try to work out this feedback issue here, we got it resolved again. Warren, let me turn to you here on Duke. Do you think if they win the ACC tournament that they can leapfrog over Virginia to become number 2 overall, or are they pretty much locked in at number 3?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they could, come out of ACC as a champion, maybe move above them. I don't see why not.
All right. And at number 4 overall, we had Villanova. So, David, let me throw them over to you here. Kind of surprised that it was unanimous that Villanova belongs here on the 1 line over Gonzaga, Arizona, Wisconsin, Kansas, or anybody else.
Well, they're the number 1 overall team, and I think the second-rated conference. It's a conference where it's really hard to win on the road. If you look at teams' home records, even the bottom of the league is somewhat formidable at home. Yet they've only lost 2 games. I think the paper warrants it, and I think their team warrants it. I still think Gonzaga is better, but it's hard for me to make the case for Gonzaga when they didn't run the table.
Is there an argument here that Villanova actually is somewhat getting punished by getting the 1 seed, to the extent that if they were a 2 seed, they'd probably be in that East region in Syracuse. Instead, they've got to go out west to Los Angeles?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it actually. I mean, that's the irony. I think it does kind of work out to their disadvantage to be a 1 seed, but I don't see them moving that. I've never. There's been times in the past where I thought they have done that, but. I don't think they'll do that. I think that if you're a 1, you're a 1, and it sucks that they have to go out west instead of.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the committee would actually make that move, but I just think it's kind of, almost backwards that Villanova might be more happy if they were a 2 seed than a 1.
Yeah, it is, but.
Let's go ahead and reveal the 2 line before we get it, and because this was also unanimous as far as the teams, although there was some distinctions in the orders of them, but we ended up with there they are. Wisconsin, Gonzaga, Kansas, and Arizona. Wisconsin ended up being number 5 overall, but ends up in the Midwest region, kind of screwing Kentucky a bit. But under the bracketing rules, that is permitted as long as we have region balance from 1 through 4.
Yeah, and again, they're not going to put a team on a plane when they can put them on a bus. So there you go.
So surprisingly, Arizona was over Gonzaga on this list here, and that's why Arizona ended up in the West region, Gonzaga in the East, Kansas in the South.
Okay, everybody has some splaining to do.
Okay, for those of you that voted Arizona above
today,
I believe somebody had them actually at number 5 overall.
I didn't have them 5, but I did have Arizona over Gonzaga. And the reason why is Arizona right now is winning a tougher league. Their losses aren't bad, and they are cruising right now. I mean, I think Arizona. People say, and I know David disagrees with this. I like Arizona eye test. Look at your TV screens right now. If you don't believe me, they're doubling up a average, albeit, but a real team in Cal.
Cal has a real team.
Arizona has the potential to make a long run, and their paper now with the Utah wins is starting to validate that.
Especially the road win at Utah, because Wisconsin doesn't quite have a road win to match that at this point.
Yeah, John, I believe you were the person that had Arizona number 5 overall. So can you explain them over Kansas and Wisconsin?
Well, I gave you one reason why, besides the sweep of Utah.
What about Wisconsin versus Arizona?
Well, Wisconsin did win a pair of neutral court games down in Atlantis earlier in the year. But I just think down the stretch, Arizona has slightly more quality wins than Wisconsin down the stretch.
Warren, what do you think about this argument that Arizona is towing the one line? I don't think you agreed with that if I recall correctly, but
no, actually, I had them as my number 8. It is true that they are having a great finish to the season, but I mean, I think Wisconsin is just kind of entrenched in that 5 spot.
And I would agree with that as well. I mean, I personally had Wisconsin in the 5 spot, and they ended up, by the consensus, being there. But again, the big thing that the higher votes for Arizona did here was flip-flopped Arizona and Gonzaga for the regions that they're going to, giving Arizona the advantage of playing their regional out in Los Angeles and sending the Zags east. Are we ready for the 3 line? Anyone further comment on the 2 here?
Is Boise in? Is Boise in? You just got to tell me if Boise's in.
Well, let's find out if they're on the 3 line, David. Here we go. The number 3 seeds. This is the Big 12 line. Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Baylor all landing on the 3 line, along with Maryland. Had to do a little rearranging here because with Kansas already in, Maryland was stuck in the South here, no matter what, sending Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Baylor to the other 3 regions.
Boy, would Maryland fans love to get a shot at Duke if this holds up.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what jumped to my mind when I first saw it. They have to go through a pretty tough 2, but Maryland-Duke regional final would be enticing.
Yeah, I have been really impressed. I don't know where they ended up on the overall seed list, but I have been really impressed with Baylor as of late. I mean, I just think they've been playing fantastic. They might win the Big 12 tournament.
Just to let you know, it actually was Maryland was 9th overall, Baylor 10th, Iowa State 11, Oklahoma 12. Baylor, it was actually because of some region balance issues, ended up almost losing out by going west, but in terms of distance from Baylor, it's not that much further to LA than it is to Cleveland or Syracuse, actually. So,
yeah.
This
is a really neat feature. How do you just get it? Well, never mind. You just get the teams to show up like that.
Well, this is just like CBS uses when they reveal teams, except we're doing it in seed order as opposed to game order because
right. It's better this way.
It's better this way.
Yeah.
I actually would have loved for it to be 16 on up to 1.
That would have been interesting. Maybe we'll do that next time.
Yeah.
as far as this goes, do any of the four of you have any teams that you felt should have been on this three line that did not end up making it, that you want to make a case for here?
I had Notre Dame. They were my 12th, but I did have Notre Dame there. They've had some really nice road wins. They've beaten a team on the one line sitting right there. They did make a recent stumble against the Qs, as we all know, but I actually think Syracuse, we'd be talking about at least a strong bubble if they were actually eligible. Notre Dame, I think their paper is pretty darn strong, and they have 5 top 50 wins right now. It's a pretty good mark for this mark. It's tough with all these Big 12 teams who are all very deserving. I don't think I had any of the teams listed below 13 here, so it's not a big gripe. I did have Notre Dame.
All right. John, how about anybody that you saw that has not got into the field yet here on the first three lines that you think may have deserved to have been at this point?
I could see the Missouri Valley champion, and that's assuming it's Wichita State or Northern Iowa, possibly get the 3 line. Because if those teams meet in the title game, one would have 2 wins over the other.
Well, I think that's a pretty good segue into the 4 line here, because let's pull it up here with the drum roll. There we go. We see both Missouri Valley Conference teams did make it in as protected seeds. It was Wichita
More
State.
irony, it would be better for both of them if they were 5s. Look at that.
and they are on their way. Wichita State to Portland, Northern Iowa to Seattle, Arkansas and Notre Dame, who Joby just mentioned, were the other 2 4 seeds here. Warren, let me turn it over to you here. What are your thoughts on these 2 Missouri Valley Conference teams, and do we really think that they could be in the top 4 seed range for both of them?
That doesn't go with my thought. I mean, I think one of them will get there. Whoever wins the conference tournament will get there, and then the other one will probably be down on the 5, and that's kind of how I put them. I just went ahead with Wichita State there, and I had Northern Iowa about 5 spots below them.
Let me ask you guys, and I'm just curious here, do you foresee the real committee even having them on the 5 line? Because their paper is so weak compared to everybody else that's a protected seed, minus maybe Gonzaga. And today,
I think 4 and 5 or 4 and 6 is a very realistic result. There are a lot of teams that have a chance to play their way into the 4 line. This weekend, North Carolina beats Duke at home. North Carolina bumps one of those teams. There's no doubt. The loser in their tournament. I mean, I think there's no in the MVC. There's a lot of teams. What if Georgetown makes a long run? In the Big East. There are teams. What if Louisville comes out of nowhere, beats Virginia this weekend? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams kind of starting to get to the jumble.
Nowhere is exactly.
One of the jumble will rise up.
Excellent point. Because there's not much they could put on the resume now, except for the one win against the other one.
All right. Well, is there anybody else that any one of you wants to make a case for should have gone into one of these protected seeds that did not? Again, this was the consensus bracket, and not everybody agreed with this by a long shot here.
I mentioned the 2 teams I had instead, but I'm not offended by Northern Iowa and Wichita State on this line. I do think this is where you start looking at North Carolina. But if North Carolina flames out, loses to Duke, loses their quarter in the ACC, you're not going to hear me argue for a 4 seed then. But there's opportunities for that to happen. I think North Carolina's proven it, has proven their worth recently, withstanding some of the challenges that they've had to deal with, Miami, etc. So I think North Carolina would be a team. And Georgetown's got a very nice resume, but then we get into the same Big East glob that we've already seen with the Big 12 at the 3 line. We start getting into all those Big East teams like Butler and Providence. I just have Georgetown right now bubbling up at the top of them, but I could receive arguments to the other one.
Well, why don't we stick on this Georgetown? Because, Joby, I'll tell you that you and I were very different on Georgetown. I had Georgetown several lines below you. I personally do not think that they are anywhere near a protected seed. I think they're closer to an 8 than a 4. I know they picked up that nice win at Butler this week, and that helped a lot. But I just have not. To me, it just has not been a team that looks that good anytime I see them play. Maybe it's more eye test than anything else.
And I've seen them. I actually like when I see their eye test. To be honest, I think the Nova win is the Butler win is very key for me because it means they're playing well right now. They seem to only lose to the same teams, if that makes sense. You know, they have the double Providence loss. Yeah, and Xavier. Yeah, they have the double. You know, it's like, okay, if those two teams weren't in the Big East, we'd be talking about Georgetown as a 2 seed. It seems like they have a solid 4 top 50 wins. They're a solid team. I can receive arguments to drop them from. You know, they were the last team on my 4 line, but I can certainly receive arguments otherwise, but right now I think they've bubbled up, and the Big East is good enough. The depth where I know conferences don't get bids, but they've produced a body of work I actually think that's pretty darn strong.
Well, I'm going to show you what actually happened here as we reveal the 5 line, and there it is. And Georgetown was not on there yet. Butler was number 20 overall, the last team to make it in the 5 line. So by the consensus, Butler as a 5, Georgetown was not. The other 3 teams, Utah, North Carolina, and West Virginia.
West Virginia's been playing really well lately. I know that they didn't win at Kansas, but they almost. I mean, that's hardly a damaging loss, and I just think their profile's really improved.
Right. Surprisingly, the team that just missed the protected seed was North Carolina. They ended up being the number 17 overall.
I'm not as big on them as I guess everybody else is. But
number 18 overall was Utah. And Warren, this is a team that has a great RPI, and I know you run an RPI site, so let me throw it over to you here. I mean, do you think this team should be higher than this 5 seed, or is this what they really deserve, despite those metrics being so strong?
Oh, well, I had them as my last 4th seed, but you know, the one thing I don't like is in their top 50 games, I mean, they've won 2, and, you know, that puts them right there with, like, Wichita State and Northern Iowa, but they've also lost 5 against top 50. You know, the rest, you know, is pretty clean. You know, it's pretty good. I mean, I don't know. I think it needs to be a little bit better to probably put them where I put them, but I think they fit in the 5 line pretty well.
Okay, fair enough. John, any comments from you about this 5 line?
I agree that there should be a Big East team on the 5 line, but I would have chosen Providence instead of Butler at this point. Providence already has a win at Butler, and they will have the Bulldogs again in the regular season finale. I think one of the tipping points for the Friars was having, besides a pair of wins over Georgetown, the neutral court victory over Notre Dame earlier in the year.
Well, what actually happened here is we reveal the 6 line. See that both Georgetown and Providence are there.
Yeah. But let's see. Louisville is really going in the wrong direction here. And today, I consider myself the luckiest
puppet.
Yeah, we get that feedback again. Yeah, let's see what we can do.
I've never had this problem before. Did you just move the speakers in front of the...
All right. Well, I think we got that cleared up a bit.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Okay, but the other teams here besides... Okay.
Yeah.
All right. The other teams here besides Georgetown and Providence, Louisville and SMU. David, this SMU team, we had a pretty big argument about them with Lee Delvecchia the other night. Why do you think they belong up here at this high?
Well, I mean, again, it's just I think that they have a lot of I know they don't have a lot of great wins, but I think they have a lot of decent wins, and you know, they don't really have any bad losses. They had the win at Arkansas, who we have way up there. Or I'm sorry, they didn't beat Arkansas. I'm making the worst case ever for them, but
It's okay, David. They're not losing Division II teams.
right, yeah.
Well, unlike their compatriot at the top of the American, the fact that they are now the sole leaders of the American is a nice, or there's one of two teams at the top of the American is a strong component to them. But this is where it gets really messy, and you have to bump someone up. I do think teams like Providence, et cetera, that John mentioned, they're a step up. Then we start getting to SMU, and SMU, you mentioned, Chad, how you could see a team fall from Georgetown be 4 or 6 or whatever, or down to 8. I actually think Georgetown is clearly a step ahead of SMU if you look at the profiles. And then SMU looks a lot more like, and I don't know when they'll show up, but what about an Oregon or et cetera, who I expect will be around the 9 seed. SMU I just think is at the front right now, and their conference leadership is part of that. Not the only reason, but part of that a lot of these other teams who are in the middle of their conferences can't say.
That's a great point. And why don't we just go ahead and reveal the next line here? This is the 7 seeds coming up here. We're going to start seeing matchups in another couple of lines, but one team I'm going to start by putting out here, the 7 line, is VCU, who is getting throttled tonight by Davidson. The game is, as we record this, is just about to go final. Also, Oklahoma State, St. John's, and San Diego State here. David, your thoughts on this? You seem to be wanting to say something.
Yeah, well, I guess for starters, I am a little surprised. I thought I had St. John's higher than everybody else would have, and I didn't have them this high. I think I had them on the 8 line. Oklahoma State, I'm a little, well, no, maybe I did have them up here, but VCU, I'm starting to think that they're a little lower. Like, is their overall body of work even the best in their conference right now? Is it better than Davidson's? Is it better than Dayton's, who has suddenly Dayton's profile since they got the win at VCU, it's looking a whole lot better, and I'm starting to think that maybe it's the best in the league. I still had VCU, I think, atop the A10, but I didn't have them up this high. The Johnnies, I love how they're playing. I think they're playing like a 7 seed. The overall profile, I didn't have them quite this high, though.
Well,
I think
let's
their
go back to
profile has really improved to get to the point where it snuck up on me, but they were, bubbling. They were a bubble team just a few weeks ago, but now they have 5 top 50 wins that came in, 3 in the top 25. They've got pretty good paper. They have the kind of a couple of weak losses, but they're playing well, and I'm shocked that a Lavin coach team has done this. But I was one of those at St. John's on this line.
John, let me throw over the San Diego State team to you, because I know you probably rated all the Mountain West teams higher than anybody else did, if I recall. So what is it about these Mountain West teams, starting with San Diego State, that you like this season?
Well, full disclosure, I am not on the Mountain West payroll. But now that I look at it, I am starting to see some more ugly losses. I know we've pointed out that everyone seems to have warts in that conference, but now that I think about it, I'm starting to see more 200-plus RPI losses on everyone's resume, whether it's San Diego, Colorado State, or Boise State. But then again, I'm not as offended by a San Diego State profile as I would be, let's say, a Cincinnati or NC State that we'll be getting to later on.
And Warren, let me throw it over to you here. Is there somebody that you think we've missed so far that we've totally that really got that should have been in the field already that we did not yet throw in?
That's a great question for me, because we've matched my seed list like almost exactly. So I guess you know.
Oh, wait, let me make sure this wasn't Ward's list and not. No, this definitely was the consensus list. Okay, well then on that note, why don't we go ahead and reveal the 8 line? And there they are. We just mentioned Dayton. They are on this line along with Cincinnati, Iowa, and Ole Miss. Is that a surprise, or is that too high, too low? What do we think about this Ole Miss team here making an 8 seed?
I think this is about where I had them. I don't know if I had them this high, but again, their paper is really good. They've kind of, I mean, they've stubbed their toes a couple times recently, but early in the year they had some like just atrocious set your hair on fire losses that were bad. But I don't know. I'm not offended at all by them on the 8 line. I think it's about probably where they belong. I mean, really. I mean, do you really raise a big stink over an 8 or a 9? Because the only difference is who's wearing white and who isn't.
Their record away from home is 11-4, and
that's real good. Yeah,
3 mile above other bubble teams right now.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to throw an extra drum roll in here for this, but as we reveal the 9 line, we're going to be revealing some potential first round or round of 64 matchups for the first time. And I'll point everybody's attention over to the West region, those games in Pittsburgh as we do this, and see what actually happened here. And this was not on purpose. This is how it really did happen.
Dayton and Michigan State. Oh.
Wrong region.
Yeah. Just as a side note, those two have only played, I think, twice since 1961. You know, 100 miles is a long ways, I guess.
Right. Joby, your thoughts on these matchups that we got here?
I'm a lot of the teams in these games are about where I had them for the most part. I know John has a disagreement with one of those. I'll let him go when it comes. But yeah, Ohio. I mean, it jumps out. Come on, Ohio State, Cincinnati. If it really does happen, that's tremendous, and it's driving distance for both fan bases right there. That would be an outstanding game. I actually had Ohio State ahead of Cincinnati, I think, but both 8-9, so it's great. I look forward to that. The key is, can Ohio State actually play away from home? We haven't seen it all year. And so in a thug throwdown that they might be with Cincinnati, can they survive on the road? Be great.
If I disagree, it's only because Brian Gregory is no longer coaching Dayton. Former Izzo assistant.
All right, we're getting that feedback again. Let's see if we can clear that up here.
Joey, what is different? Did you just move your speakers in front of your microphone? I mean, I don't understand what. We've never had that problem before.
With regard to the teams that actually made it here, the one that surprised me the most getting this high, and I personally did not have them this high, was this Oregon team.
Yeah, that's high.
Let me throw it to you, Warren. Warren, what are your thoughts on this Oregon team, and do they really belong this high up on the 9 line?
Well, they've been sort of climbing, I would say, in my list, and they were actually my last 9. Let me see. I'm not sure if it's. I mean, you know, we always get in this area where a lot of things look alike. You know, a lot of people have like 2 losses to the 100, 200 range, and very few top 50 wins. So this is almost where we get in the 9, 10, 11s, where it's like sort of pick your preference.
Very true. One other potential interesting matchup here, the way that this fell out, and this is permissible, although I don't really care for it under the new system almost, but if you look in the South region, you have a potential Duke versus NC State round of 32 game, and then a potential Duke-Carolina Sweet 16 game, and then another ACC matchup with Duke and Maryland in the regional finals there.
Yes, the Duke Maryland, regional Maryland.
And the reason why Duke and NC State could potentially play in the round of 32 is that they only met once during the regular season.
By the way, one thing that will happen if that game is in Charlotte and that were to happen, obviously NC State fans would be there, Virginia fans would be there. Duke fans will be outnumbered 10 to 1 in that region. I mean, it's the worst region for them possible. I mean, there will not be a soul in that stadium rooting for Duke except for Mike Krzyzewski and his wife. So, I mean, that is a nightmare scenario, and I actually don't see Duke getting out of that. I actually see that being a huge hell. If Ole Miss beats NC State, Ole Miss will have more support than Duke.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the 10 line. We are definitely getting to bubble territory here. I believe everybody on the 10 line were teams that all of us had in the field, but there's our 10 line: Georgia, Colorado State, Indiana, and LSU. David, you said, "Oh wow," let's throw it over to you.
There is something that everyone likes about Indiana that I just don't understand. I mean, I don't like sweet tea either. Everybody else thinks it's fantastic. Indiana is my sweet tea. I barely had them in the field. They only have 3 true road wins, and I think all of them except the one at Illinois were not really too exciting. I just don't get having them this far inside the bubble.
Warren, why don't we throw it over to you?
It's a great example of how different people evaluate, and David and I have discussed our different valuations. Indiana's a great example of it. I value high-end wins. No other bubble team around this area, I think, has 5 top 50 wins. I, too, think I didn't have them. I had them about right here. The road stuff is concerning, but it's where David will weigh road more than the number of quality wins. I'll weigh quality wins over road. They're both important. It's just how you, as an individual, and this is why the committee process has different. Not everybody thinks the same on a committee. It's a great. Indiana is a perfect example of how you might view things differently.
Sorry, Warren, go ahead, please.
Oh, I mean, that's a good point. It's sort of what saved Indiana. I actually had them lower, and they sort of. I mean, they've been moving down my list, but what moved them out of that last 4 ends for me was, just a couple of extra top 50 wins, but their non-conference strength of schedule is getting out of is like 133. It's getting kind of high. So it's a good point about how different members of the committee look at things, and that's probably why you'll probably see Indiana a little lower on a few people, and Indiana a little bit higher on a few people's list too.
David, I know one of the things you really value is road wins, right?
Yeah.
Where did you have Colorado State on your list? Do you have that in front of you?
It was in the 10 or 11 range. I think I had them on the 10 line.
Can you justify that to me? Because I personally moved Colorado State down into my first 4. That's how low I had Colorado State. They've done nothing on the road against anybody of any quality.
Well, I mean, 7-4 in true road games is something.
But when those 7 wins are against Presbyterian, it doesn't quite count, does it?
0 top 100 road wins.
Yeah. I don't like. Honestly, one of the things, it was just I know I shouldn't do this. It's categorical, but the RPI was so high. It almost just felt weird having them in the first 4. I kind of had to talk myself into. I think they were either my top 11 or last 10. And again, I don't know. I kind of had to talk myself into it. It's not an easy defense.
Okay. I was looking for the defense, but it's not there. But let's move on to the 11 line now. As we move to the 11 line, there are actually going to be 5 teams on this line here, so we're going to see our first 2 teams that are from the first 4, as well as our final 3 teams that avoided the first 4. And David, you've been looking for it all night. There they are in the Midwest, Boise State.
Okay. Am I blind here? Is Iowa not in the field? Oh wait, no, there they are on the 8. Okay.
Yeah, I was in as an 8 seed.
Okay,
yes.
Good. I was about to say, how in the hell are they behind Indiana? This committee has lost its mind and needs to eat fewer paint chips. But
our other teams here, Xavier, despite the 4 ugly losses on the profile, an Illinois team that that I've seen, a lot of the bracketologists out there are not putting this Illinois team in the field. I like their profile a lot better.
You like their profile? I
don't love their profile, but I like it better than anybody else that we're talking about in this range.
Do you like our
John, let me throw it over to you here for this line here. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, my first thought was I was initially shocked to see Xavier this low, but after further review, also including some of my other teams that were under consideration. It's also starting to look closer to Kansas State's profile, where they have quite a few quality wins, but also lots of bad losses to offset that a bit. Would I have put them on the 11 line? I'm not sure I would have them that low yet, but if they lose at Creighton on Saturday, then it's a whole different ball game.
Xavier really needs to. The Surgeon General has contacted Xavier and advised them to not lose that game.
Warren, this Texas team made it into our first four here, despite a ton of losses, and really, that huge win this week over Baylor. Was that the deciding factor here?
They definitely were on a slide, and they needed something, and that was it. Personally, I had them as my first team out, and they were further out before that. They played a lot of top 50 teams, but they haven't beaten very many. So, sometimes I know I'll look and I'll say, hey, I don't have it right in front of me, but they had 3 or 4 top 50 wins, but my goodness, I think they played 10 or 11. So
yeah, they have a ton of quality losses, but in the end, you do need some wins. I think that
there you go.
Hanging in there.
Your preference is quality loss. Texas is your team.
Joby, let me throw it over to you for this Davidson team. Did you have them in?
I had them beyond the first four, even before tonight. I feel pretty good about it. Now with the VCU win, they definitely are probably not in a first four situation. Man, they're healthy. People, you got to realize Gibbs being out, they still won a lot of games with him out, but their best player is back now. And they're proving over the last week with some very quality wins what their best player is. They are a tournament team, and I'm not just saying that to dig you, Chad, because I know you've kind of been on the rant here.
Chad
against
Davidson's in the field.
The conference schedule's awful, but the fact that it's not actually as awful as it should. They did play Virginia, and they did go play North Carolina.
Oh, let's give Davidson a little credit here.
Yeah,
Catholic is in the
but the fact is they performed late. So they're probably, we're talking about who the best team in the A10 was, and Dayton certainly can be a strong argument along with VCU. Davidson's at the top of the conference. I know unbalanced schedule and stuff. Davidson's at the top of the conference right now, and that has to be weighed, and I think will get them out of the first four unless they just barf all over themselves playing a hypothetical George Mason, as we said earlier, in the tournament, A10 tournament.
Well, where we are now, we have two at-large spots left to go. They're both going to be on the 12 line in our second first four game. There were 5 other teams that received votes to be in the field. Those teams were Miami, Tulsa, BYU, Purdue, and Temple. David, you had BYU way above the first four, so I want to throw it over to you before we reveal who made it in, and to make this BYU case.
Well, they did have, an ever so slightly impressive win over the weekend at Gonzaga. It's one of the better. I guess when I just see that, I think that's going to carry them pretty far. They don't have too many horrible losses. They've been playing well lately. I think they have something like 8 or 9 true road wins, but really, no one else on the bubble is going to have a win anywhere near that caliber. In fact, nobody else on the one line might have one of that caliber as well.
David, Miami does.
Yes, Miami does.
Bad losses, but Miami does.
Yeah.
Well, Miami's big addition here is while Pittsburgh is not a team in the field, they're definitely a team that's going to be probably on the board, and Miami just won at Pitt as well. I think that was a huge win for the Hurricanes.
I had Miami in. I know that they're real schizophrenic and all over the place, but I had them in. The good on their profile is pretty good.
Well, let's go ahead and make the final reveal here. These are the last 2 teams in, as well as the other 12 seeds. and it was Temple and Purdue. Neither Miami nor BYU made it. You could see there the last 4 out is also populated. Miami, BYU, Tulsa, and while Texas A&M never didn't get any votes to be in the field by anybody, they were the highest rank among your teams out to make a 4th team out. Let's just go down the line here and talk about whether you agree or disagree with these picks here. Let's start with you, Warren.
They go along with what I mean. I had, let's see, Purdue, Temple, Illinois, and Tulsa as my last 4. I mean, it's sort of where I thought they'd be. I mean, I got a feeling no matter what we think about these teams, they're going to have to do something in their conference, because if not, they're just going to fall right out. These, they're hanging on by a thread.
All right. John, how about you? Temple, Purdue, Texas, Davidson in, BYU, Tulsa, and Miami all out.
Oh, Miami and who was the other team? Oh, BYU. It's pretty interesting they can't get in with one big road win, while Temple seems to be riding the Kansas win all year. I mean, Temple also did have a win over UC earlier in the year, but besides Louisiana Tech, do they really have any wins of note to get in the field? That would be my question for them. Although I did have Temple as one of my last 4 in.
I'll actually tell you that we had I think David had given me a contingency bracket based on the Temple East Carolina game, and it was close enough that had Temple lost that game, Temple would not have been in this field and Miami would have been. But they did pull off the win, and that's why Temple is still in the field for now. David?
Yeah, I mean, the one team I just am not seeing, and I know you said you liked them, and I guess everybody else did, is Illinois. What am I missing? I mean, I know John Gross gets angry, and Chad certainly doesn't want John Gross angry at him. But other than that,
Joby, can you make a case for Illinois for us?
Yeah, I was one of those that had Illinois. Yeah, they're riding the neutral court Baylor win a long way. But they do have a number of, once again, you go to those quality win component. I like that. That was a component. They weren't high. They were in my last 4 in group. But they, I think they had enough over teams. I was one of those who had Miami in. The team in our field that I didn't was Temple. Exactly for the reasons John stated. I feel like they're riding the one Kansas win. Well, you know what? Miami has a nice little single win as well, and Illinois neutral over what we have as a 3 seed is pretty darn good as well. So that to me actually is a very good argument for having Illinois above them, because I think their overall profile isn't as bereft as like a Temple as John reeled out earlier.
All right. Just the other 3 teams, Boston, Murray State, Wofford. Is there anything else out there that is not on the board here that anybody thinks can make a run still, like a serious run here for the NCAA tournament?
I'm not really seeing it. I mean, the teams that were no. I mean, I would say Purdue because I like how they've been playing, but they're already in the field, so.
Okay.
Well, there are teams bubbling, Chad. That, like, for instance, Pitt was mentioned earlier.
Oh yeah.
But Pitt would have to make big wins on their way. They'd have to go. Let's say they're the 8th seed in the ACC. If they go out and beat a Miami in the first round, and then the second round beat in the Sweet 16 of the ACC, then they beat Virginia. We're talking at that point. Okay, Pitt's right there, if not in. So the teams have to make a run. But, yeah, there are teams here that if they make a run, if UCLA makes a run to the Pac-12 finals, you got to seriously consider the Bruins at that point.
Yeah, UCLA is one. Stanford is another that this thing has a shot, especially playing at both Arizona schools this week, to make a run if they can sweep this weekend, even without making a run in the Pac-12 tournament.
I'm curious to know, because this team is in the rankings. We discussed them a little bit last night. I don't think Murray State's going to win the OVC tournament. Are they inside the bubble if they don't? I realize there they are right there on it, but how many teams on the bubble would you rank ahead of them on your seed lists?
With another loss, I wouldn't rank them above anybody on the bubble.
Okay. What does everybody else think?
What about a loss to Belmont? Who's pretty solid. Yeah,
Belmont, Eastern Kentucky, either one of them. No.
Eastern Kentucky, yeah.
I got to be honest. I think I had Wofford ahead of them. I think Wofford's better. I'm not as big on SFA as some other people, I don't think, but I think Wofford. It's easier to argue for them than it is for Murray State. The only thing about Murray State is that they're in the rankings.
And just to follow up on that point,
does have a nice NC State win, so that's
the way the seed list came out, Wofford was above Murray State on our master seed list, with Stephen F. Austin being the last team here on the 12 line. With that, let's quickly run through the remaining seeds. The 13 line here, we see here Central Michigan, Harvard, Louisiana Tech, and Valpo. Very interesting Notre Dame Valpo game there potentially in Columbus. Kind of like that one.
That one would be fun. This La Tech team is a live. Oh my God! If you think that there's not enough offense in basketball, get to Jacksonville for that La Tech Arkansas game. That's a live wire with a high ceiling that just doesn't play up to it all the time.
Let's keep going here and take a look at the 14 line. High Point, Iona, UC Davis, North Carolina Central. Anything of note here?
Oh, Iona, Maryland would be fun. I wish those two played. UC Davis, again, a great story. I hope they're able to get through the Big West tournament and then go to beautiful, because you don't want to leave like sunny California and go to Omaha. I mean, just really, huge vacation spot there, Omaha, for their fans. Against Iowa State. I think they would get clobbered, but it would be fun seeing them out there.
They're leaving Oakland, though, so come on.
15 line, Georgia State, Northeastern, Albany, Texas Southern. We'll talk about teams here that are all very, very likely to lose their first game. And the 16 line coming in is South Dakota State, Sacramento State being the two teams that avoid the first four, New Mexico State versus North Florida, Bucknell versus St. Francis Brooklyn as our first four games. John, any thoughts on the final bracket as we see it here?
Well, one of the, I suppose you could call it a little surprise, was seeing Central Michigan on the 13 line and Iona on the 14 line. Did you have Iona as the top 14 and Central the bottom 13?
I will give you that information in half a second here. It was Central Michigan, then Harvard, then Iona in the seed list. And I'll make the case here for Central Michigan. They swept Buffalo, who is a top 50 RPI team now, and those two wins are what pushes them above, I think, Harvard or an Iona.
They've come on strong, too. They were in a big gobbledygook in the MAC, and now they've kind of taken an establishment as the strongest MAC team. They've gone out and beaten the other top MAC teams over the last 3 weeks in pretty efficient fashion. I'm starting to believe in Central Michigan myself.
Yeah, real exciting game earlier in the week against, I think it was Bowling Green. So,
I wonder how much scheduling Buffalo is helping the RPI for Buffalo.
Yeah.
Warren, let me turn this over to you here, being our RPI guy here. Buffalo is sitting here at a top 40 RPI. I don't think they're anywhere close to being a bubble team, though. But can you explain this RPI for Buffalo?
Oh, well, can I take my shot at Central Michigan real quick?
Yeah. Sure, take your shot. Just do both. Okay.
I like that they played a non-conference strength of schedule of 349. I really had faith in Matt.
There were two that were worse, damn it.
But okay, so I didn't dwell on Buffalo very long as I went down my list. They didn't have much there. Let me go back and take another second look at them since their RPI is 33.
I mean, 33 should be in the bubble, you would think, but I don't see anything on the profile that merits it.
I don't see anything on their profile that explains them being 33rd. I mean, I have a basic idea of how the RPI works, and I think they played 3 teams with just atrocious records.
Right. So they did play Kentucky and Wisconsin on the road. That probably is part of it. Of course, they didn't win those games. The best team they beat is 86, so that's probably why we're not talking about them as a bubble team. How did they get?
It's just a really weird RPI number that high for this team.
So what was their non-conference again?
Buffaloes or Central Michigan?
No, for Central.
Central Michigan.
349. It was slightly. Yeah, it could have been.
Wow, those are Notre Dame's leftovers right there.
But you look though, Central Michigan beat Buffalo home and road, and they beat Toledo home and road, and that's what I like about Central Michigan right now. It's what they did in conference.
Yeah, that's why I like them. So Buffalo's RPI, I think, attributed to they played 17 road games and only 12 home games. They're 20-9 overall. So it's probably coming out of that, but those 20 aren't very good.
Man.
But a lot of them are
That's
on the
why
road.
the 1.4 to 0.6 ratio, I think, is just way too high because a team like Buffalo can kind of game the number a little bit. Ever since the change in RPI to that extent, road home, I think it was a mistake. That's just me.
Well, on that note, I think that covers our bracket for the night. What we're going to do is we're going to get this posted on the website as well. I want to thank all 4 of you for participating in this. I think we came up with a pretty good bracket overall. Did anybody have any major complaints about it before we sign off here?
I mean, other than it not exactly matching mine. Not really.
I just have a minor complaint. How was Georgetown not put in the Syracuse region or the East region?
How was Georgetown did not end up in this East region? We could take a quick look at that. They were
well, Syracuse isn't on the tournament. In the tournament. Otherwise, we'd have to.
It actually came down to I believe that SMU was higher than them on the S curve. And therefore went to Omaha, which is closer to them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that
I get John's point. How would a crowd in Syracuse react to Georgetown would be a lot of fun. That's the point that John's getting at.
Sorry,
and also, out of that same bracket, look at the next second round, Michigan State, Virginia. That is a rematch of a very good Sweet 16 game from last year. And so it could be very interesting if that pops up.
Well, again, as we mentioned before, this bracket will be sent over to the actual NCAA selection committee as a starting point for them, a guideline as they begin to prepare. Obviously, they can make some changes as further games get completed, but we've been doing this as a service to them all season, and we will continue to help them out as much as we can. On that note, I want to thank everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you again real soon.